Hey everyone, this is Milton from the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Podcast. And if you really want to learn how to level up your life, you should be listening to the Time to Shine Today podcast with my incredibly talented friend, Scott Ferguson.
Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. It is Scott Ferguson, and I am so stoked to bring you this interview with my really good buddy, Milton Campis. He's a heart attack survivor, got into the jiu-jitsu game a little bit later, I'd say. I mean, he said in his early 40s, but he's a purple belt and a pretty much a badass. But he's not a badass outside of being on the mat. He's very humble, approachable. He has a fantastic podcast, which I do want you to check out after you listen to our show and our interview here. It's called Jiu Jitsu Dummies, and it's fantastic. It has you kind of laughing sometimes, but also gets serious. He really loves the veterans, gets the veterans propped up. Also, competitors, if you're out there and you're listening and you want to get interviewed, reach out to me. I can make a personal introduction to Milton, my good friend here. So without further ado, sit back, relax. There's an abundance of knowledge that's coming your way from my good friend, Milton Campis, the podcast host of Jiu Jitsu Dummies. Let's level up. Time to Shine Today podcast varsity squad. It is Scott Ferguson, and people know me, I'm very active. I'm on my paddleboard pretty much every morning here in South Florida. Like to go out and kind of do my thing and stay in shape. And I'm just recently started going to with George Andrade here in Marshall Fitness here in Jupiter, Florida, with jiu-jitsu and some Muay Thai. And it's something I've grappled my whole life, but jiu-jitsu is something I've always kind of fell in love with, the art of watching it. And now we're bringing on a guy, a purple belt, who's around my age, because I'm going to be 49 next week. I believe he's 46 or 47. His name is Milton Campis. He's got an awesome podcast, which make sure you listen to this episode first. But when you're done, in the show notes, you're going to see, click through and go check out Jiu Jitsu Dummies. And it's not Jiu Jitsu for dummies, okay, people? It's Jiu Jitsu Dummies. And it's funny, it's interactive, and you actually get a gist of the art of Jiu Jitsu and how it can actually be fun and creative in life lessons that are learned in it. Milton was a heart attack survivor. He's a jiu-jitsu purple belt. He's host, again, like I said, of the Jiu Jitsu Dummies podcast, executive director of the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation. He's a marketing executive by day and a jiu-jitsu practitioner, podcaster by night. And one thing about his podcast is he's filled a void that, like, other people have tried to start jiu-jitsu podcasts, and it's kind of hard. It's like, I used to joke when I wrestled in high school, it's like, if you're wrestling, how would a commentator call a wrestling match? Yeah, the ref's tapping the mat. There must be a fire there. Oh, he's pinned. It's kind of like that with jiu-jitsu, but he makes it fun and it makes it interactive, and it's just awesome. And Milton, thank you so much for coming on. Introduce yourself to Time to Shine Today varsity squad. But first, what's your favorite color and why, brother?
Can you tell? It's
black.
Black.
Love it, man.
Very specifically because it's slimming.
I was just going to say, dude, it's slimming.
You can't see more of Milton right now. So black is definitely my favorite color.
I love it, man.
And my gym colors are red and black. So
red and black?
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. And you train out of Coral Springs, is that right?
I train out of Fight Sports in Coral Springs. Most people know Roberto Cyborg Abreu, who owns essentially the franchise, or he is the main guy down in Miami. My school is in Coral Springs. I train under Felipe and Sofia Amarante.
Wow.
They are two three-stripe black belts, or some people we call it stripes.
Sure.
Some people call it degrees in other disciplines, but we call it stripes. But that means every stripe is, I think, about 3 years. So they've had their black belts for almost, they're going on 10 years now. So, very proud to train under them. Had a really nice training session last night. They beat us up pretty good. Nice. But man, love it. Yeah. Fighting under Fight Sports, there's a lot expected of you. It's really tough. I would say tournament style jiu-jitsu, mm-hmm. right? They helped, they help a lot of fighters that are fighting in the UFC. But very tournament competition style, right. A little less, street defense and more of that competition style. So, so love it. Love training.
I love that. And so what was your introduction into the jits world, man? Squad, when I say jits, it's jiu-jitsu. It's just shorter. It's easy. What was your introduction, brother?
So, I mean, it really goes back to the days of watching boxing with my dad when I was a kid. Like you said, I mean, I'm not as old as you are. You said you're 49. You said we're almost the same age. I'm 47. I mean, that's like light years away. So, back when I was a kid, I'm sure you can remember, Wide World of Sports on Saturday and Sunday afternoons, right? Boxing. I think they used to do it in like the parking lot sometimes, the really big ones. Vegas, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my love of combat sports goes back that far.
Wow.
Growing up, I would watch boxing with my dad. As I got older, I lived in New York originally as a kid. I moved to Florida when I was about 25. And my friends introduced me to the UFC. Now, I had done a little bit of martial arts. I was very much, when it came to sports, I'd start something, quit, a few years here and there. My game was soccer when I was a kid. I actually was a gymnast as well. Those are the things I did for the longest, like 6-7 years each. But, started, you get a little older, you want to learn a little self-defense, got in and out of different taekwondos and some karate, never kept with anything. When I moved to Florida, we had a nice little crew of friends and family that we'd all watch boxing together. And then I had some of my friends introduce me to the UFC, and it was over from there. And that was in my 30s. Didn't get my start in jiu-jitsu until I was 41. So this year I'm 6 years in.
Purple belt.
Yeah, 6 years in, purple belt. Started again right before my 41st birthday. So actually, it's going to be 7 years in, right? Yeah, I'm 48 in June, so almost 7 years in. And just felt. I kind of tell people I was in love with jiu-jitsu before I even stepped on the mat. I did a couple of years of wrestling in junior high, which I still, some of those little things that I use with takedowns and things I remember I use today.
Right.
But I fell in love with jiu-jitsu before I even got in the mat, just watching it. I actually remember the look on my professor's face when he asked me, it was a brand new gym, family friend. He said, "What do you know about jiu-jitsu?" And I'm like, "Well, I watch a lot of UFC, so I kind of get the gist of it. I kind of feel like I know what I'm doing a little bit more than the average student." He just smiled at me, and I didn't realize what that smile meant until he folded me up into a pretzel later in the class. And then I realized what that smile meant. Like, you have no clue what you're about to get into. But I've drank the punch. I have been addicted ever since. First 3-4 years, 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, open mats on the weekends. My wife thought my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, she hated jiu-jitsu. She didn't understand that addiction. And, I would open the gym for my coach. So sometimes I'd be there for 5 hours on a weekday. Mm-hmm. He was in law enforcement, so he might have to be out on a stakeout or he would just be out of the gym. He'd hand me the keys and say, "You got to open for me tomorrow." I'm a white belt opening a gym, training the kids' classes. And, again, just fell in love with it. But 5 hours in a gym on a Tuesday, she used to get a little upset with me. But fast forward, I had a T-shirt website at the time that was an MMA site. I slowly converted that to a jiu-jitsu site. It's now our podcast store. Started the podcast store. May will be 2 years. And, everything's about jiu-jitsu. My wife loves to tell me that I look like jiu-jitsu threw up on me because I've got the tat. I'm always in a shirt. I didn't wear my jiu-jitsu hat today because she's telling me that it's a little too much sometimes, but I did wear my podcast polo today.
No, I love that you brought up humility, bro. And where does humility kind of fit into the world of jiu-jitsu with, because a lot of people say it's fighting, that don't know, but it's really about more control and not only controlling the other person, but controlling your emotions and everything. Where do you think humility fits in, bro?
I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me yesterday. And I think that this will answer your question. We really need to leave our ego at the door when it comes to jiu-jitsu. And for people that don't understand, this is not the same as other martial arts where, a lot of times you're doing your katas in karate and you're doing your forms. And in, taekwondo, you might be, hitting some pads. And that's a great training session. And I take nothing away from those people. But Scott, you and I both know, when you go to jiu-jitsu, you're rolling that day, rolling, sparring, fighting, whatever you want to call it. We're getting dirty. It's fighting without the strikes. Let's call it that. Mm-hmm. And if you don't lead your ego at the door, you're going to get hurt or you're going to hurt somebody else.
Right.
But last night, it was funny because I have a friend that's about to do one of the Orlando IBJJF tournaments in March. And we were rolling really hard and somebody was recording us last night for him. But they wanted to show him. It's a blue belt. I'm a purple belt. I'm on the cusp of brown if I could stay healthy.
Nice.
And he was recording us, and this is where ego slips in. He was going pretty hard. And so, usually, especially as a higher belt, I'm going to raise my level to your level. I might let you catch me in some stuff, but this is where the ego comes in, where it's really hard, especially when somebody's taping you, to let somebody so my ego crept in. They sent me the video. I was showing it to my wife, and we were rolling around. I basically tapped him once. Second time, he caught me in, like, we were in a transition. He caught me in an arm bar, but it was kind of loose. Under any normal circumstances, I would have tapped to reset instead of let him like jerk my arm around.
Right.
And my ego crept in, and that humility wasn't there, and I didn't tap, and got out of it, and we continued to grapple.
Did you kind of turn that thumb that certain way or something?
Yeah, he actually, kind of had it. My elbow was just below the crotch, so he really couldn't have it. He had to kind of get a little closer. He created too much distance. You're right. In jiu-jitsu, especially when you're attacking, space is bad. He had too much space, for the submission. But my wife was looking at me and she's like, why'd you let him do that? Isn't this supposed, she kind of asked that question you just asked me. Aren't you supposed to tap and just continue? Right. And I was like, my ego got the better of me. Somebody was recording and I let it creep in. So I think we always grapple with that part of it. It's, sometimes we go hard. I think everybody has maybe that one guy in the gym that they really don't want to tap to, or like maybe goes a little extra hard when you roll. And he's actually one of my co-hosts on the show. His name is Miguel. He's actually one of my co-hosts, very good friend. I let my ego creep in. So that could have hurt me. And I'm going to learn my lesson from that, whether somebody's recording or not. Next time, tap, reset, let him get a little excited. I have to also say he's never tapped me yet. And he reminds me of that, like, I'm going to get you one day. So again, a little bit of ego crept in.
Sure.
But, long story short is we really do have to leave the ego at the door. You can't let you got to be very humble. Humility is something that we discuss all of the time. And we've got to know that if you don't check that ego, you're going to usually wind up hurting yourself or somebody else. So, it's a tough game, but if you do the right things, you can, last a long time. And at 47, I definitely see that black belt on the horizon, and I want to stay healthy and continue to train as much as I can.
Till you get that, man. That's gonna be an amazing opportunity for you. So what do you think makes a great jiu-jitsu? We'll call it coach, because the listeners are going to hear it. Yeah. So like, what do you think it makes a great jiu-jitsu teacher or coach?
I know for me, again, funny enough, I kind of relate my background in marketing to this. And I was talking to somebody about this in my marketing, in my marketing gig during the day. We were talking about training, and I feel the best coaches, they see kind of like, they kind of help you emphasize what you're good at. If I'm skinny with long legs, I know triangles are going to be your game. So I've got to guide you to that path. I'm a bigger guy. I'm about 235, about 5'11". I've got a nice little gut here that I could probably get rid of, but, work out, I try to keep strong, but I'm a big guy. I'm the biggest and the oldest guy in my school. So, my coaches know that I'm not going to spin around and flip around like a younger guy. So them showing me little things, it's a game of inches, showing me the little things that'll work for me in those positions are really helpful. And again, when I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, I was talking about emphasizing, like, what are you strong about? What are you passionate about? And if I know those things about you, then I can help you be the best salesperson. I can help train you. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. If I can really see your strengths and your weaknesses and say, well, don't go here. Like, I hate getting stacked. Getting stacked when you got a little bit of a belly is a nightmare.
Yeah.
So like learning how to, kind of crawl with your shoulders and learning how to shrimp out properly. And again, maybe you just got to tap.
Right.
But when a coach knows how to help you emphasize what you're good at and what you should stay away from, I think that's what makes a good coach. And that's why I like my coach. He's got a bad back. I've got a little bit of a bad back, which I've actually been getting better. But he teaches an incredible half guard game. Where you've got one, the lockdown, if you're familiar, the lockdown or the electric chair, as Eddie Bravo calls it.
Eddie Bravo, yeah.
He's won. My coach has won 3. He's undefeated in Fight to Win. He's got 3 wins, all with the electric chair, all within a transition of a sweep to it's like a knee or a leg lock. Correct, so like, I'm really strong there. I'll let you attack, and I'm going to take advantage of, with my strength, I'm going to be able to take advantage of that position. So yeah, again, a good coach is someone who's going to help you
play to your strengths.
Yeah, you play to your strengths and teach you the things that you need to know that are going to make you better, not try to turn you into something you're not.
Got it. So when somebody kind of comes in is say a newbie. We'll just call them a newbie. And they
Yeah.
kind of come in, and when you're having that first discussion about jiu-jitsu, how does that conversation go? What are you let's ask it this way. Is there any good question that you would want them to ask you when starting their jiu-jitsu journey?
I love one of the questions that we ask on the show when we have like a group of 4 or 5 questions that we ask every guest.
Sure.
And one of them is, what would you go back and tell the white belt you, the moment before you stepped on the mat for the first time? What would you tell yourself? And I like when people engage, like, they'll usually say, how do you like this? How long have you been doing it? That's great. But I really do like to ask them the question, why are you here?
Right.
What are you here for? Self-defense. We've got law enforcement officers that are doing it for their job. Are you some kid that fell in love with the UFC and you feel like you're going to, be training MMA? Why are you here? And again, just like we said, playing to your strengths. If I know why you're here, I know how to help you. Now, I'm not a coach at my school. I've coached before. I'm not a coach at my school. Sure. I'd love to be, and if I had more time. But I do love coaching people. As a higher belt, you're always coaching the guys that are below you. If you're good at what you do and you're a good student yourself, you should be coaching the guys that come behind you. So really understanding why they're there. And then just like we said before, helping them emphasize their strengths or what they're looking for. So somebody that's looking for, more the health aspects, or maybe they're heavy and they're looking to lose weight. Okay, listen, you need to be running on your own before you get here. Make sure you stretch, do these things, do an extra 5 push-ups when we're doing the warm-ups, do something a little bit more. If you're truly doing this for law enforcement, my school may not be the best school for you. I interviewed a guy from a website or an Instagram handle, Jiu Jitsu 50. And he is a police officer who actually trains other police officers in their academy. So again, we might not be the right school if you're looking for straight law enforcement. My school right now, where I am, I said this before, fight sports as a whole is very much a tournament jiu-jitsu style. So, a lot of times we're starting on the ground sometimes. Well, you're not going to be starting on the ground when you're making an arrest. So understanding what they're looking for will help us guide them in their journey. And sometimes maybe we're not the right school. American Top Team down the road, if you want to be in MMA, you want to be in the cage, we're just doing straight jiu-jitsu. You should be over there learning stand up, ground and pound, MMA, true MMA. Right. So, that would really be my advice or how I would handle it in that situation.
Beautiful. I love that answer. It's very transparent. So who has had the most profound impact on your jiu-jitsu practice?
I would say probably my first coach. And we don't speak, unfortunately, now, so I'm not going to say his name. Okay. But he was. I was lucky enough to train with him when his school first opened. So literally, and I got my blue belt in 6 months. And really actually 7 months, because I asked him, hey, hold off, because I want to do this next tournament, my first tournament ever at white belt. I said, could you just get awarded, do the ceremony in February? Because I'd really like to do at least one tournament at white belt, which I did, got double gold in gi and no gi. And they actually put me in with guys half my age. So I was very proud of that performance. But, it was just me and him some days. So right. I was able, I'm standing in front of a black belt who's a friend. I could ask him anything. We would train for 2 hours sometimes, and it'd just be the two of us or very small classes. So the interaction with your coach without there being 20 other students in the class, that had a huge impact on me. And I was able to move very, very quickly from just white to blue because of that personal attention. We also became very, very good friends at that time. Mm-hmm. So it was, training with them and then going to his house to watch a UFC the next night, and asking him questions, and, you'd be in his house and be like, hey, how do you do this? And remember that movie work, having just that encyclopedia right in front of you was incredible. So he definitely had the biggest impact. Very sad that we kind of drifted apart when he closed his school. It happens. But definitely had the most profound effects on me and my jiu-jitsu to this day. Lucky enough too, he was 265 and shorter than me. So big dude, wrestled, had judo brown belt, jiu-jitsu black belt, wrestled in high school, law enforcement. So he knew everything. Right. So, learning from somebody that was big like me and learning how to maneuver my weight in the right ways to get the outcome that I wanted, I still use those. I was with him for, I think, about 2 years. I still use those tactics and methods that he taught me today.
The thanks for being transparent about all that. I'm 6'1", I'm 265. So like I get stacked like now in the classes. I didn't know
fun.
What it was, but
Love it.
But you learn to breathe through things really quickly.
Yeah.
So how about what's the worst advice you've ever been given in jiu-jitsu?
Worst advice that I've ever been given. I'm going to maybe kind of change that question a little bit and say,
okay.
I don't know if I've ever gotten really bad advice. I'm sorry. Because you know what I'm thinking in the back of my head as you say that, I would say probably the worst thing that I've heard in jiu-jitsu, let me say it this way. Everybody says no politics. All of our gyms are competitive. Sure. All of our coaches know each other. Some of them don't like each other because they open in each other's backyards.
Right.
So, somebody standing in front of me saying, no politics. Listen, no coach likes to see you online training at another gym on an open mat. There's a respect thing involved and you want to, talk to you. I can't call it advice, but, there's no politics. Don't go anywhere where they're political. They don't like the guy down the road. They're all political. And I get that.
Yeah.
As I'm not a gym owner, so I get to, I'm interviewing other gym owners in the area. Sure. and in other parts of the country. So again, that's not necessarily a piece of advice. I can't think of anything off the top of my head advice-wise, but I could certainly say that when they stand in front of me telling me, no politics, don't even get involved with that stuff. Meanwhile, they don't like the guy down the road. I always kind of, laugh to myself.
So you saw the movie Back to the Future, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So let's get in that DeLorean with Marty McFly. Let's go back to the 22-year-old, Martin. What kind of knowledge nuggets are you dropping? Not from a jiu-jitsu, I'm talking life standpoint right now. What kind of knowledge nuggets, we call them here at Time to Shine today, kind of knowledge nuggets are you dropping on the 22-year-old Milton to help him level up, shorten his learning curve, and blast through maybe a little quicker?
One of the biggest things that I do that I wish I was doing from the very beginning, stretching, yoga, taking care of my body outside of jiu-jitsu as a whole. I'm just really starting to do that properly now. I wake up in the morning, I have a massage gun. So almost from neck down, literally neck down to my calves gets massage. Yep. Got one of those. Massage gun. I've got the So Right. I use it on the front and the back. It gets in all the little crevices.
Yeah, man.
Got the chirp wheel. I've got the little contraption that you put on your neck and you kind of put it on the door or a banister and it pulls the neck. You lay on the floor. I've got it all. Good. I wish I was doing those things from the beginning of my journey. Yoga would have solved a lot of problems for me. Yoga, again, it's not just stretching. It would have probably helped me with kind of my weight when I first started.
Sure.
But really, as a whole, taking care of my body off the mat, sleep, eating right. Yes. I'm just really, starting to do those things now. And I really wish that I was doing those from the beginning. So that's the best advice that I can give myself or anyone else that's going to do jiu-jitsu.
Thank you for saying that. It's funny. I got on a mat in yoga. I'm in 3 mornings a week in Ashtanga in Juno Beach, and it is life-changing, man. I mean, it got rid of all my plantar fasciitis. Actually created space in my C5, C6, and all the falls I took on the mat. So thank you for saying that and being transparent about that. So, Milton, how do you want your dash remembered, man? That little line in between your incarnation date and your expiration date, man. Your life date and death date. How do you want Milton's dash remembered?
Somebody asked me this question the other day, and I kind of think I answered it wrong.
You got your second chance now, baby.
I got my second chance. If somebody said, as it relates, like when I ask, sometimes I have like a group of questions that I ask, and I'll always say, like, one of them is, what's your biggest regret? I always say, as it relates to jiu-jitsu, so that we don't, let's stay within the jiu-jitsu realm.
Sure.
And when I answered that, I answered it just like I would ask it and said it kind of within the realm of jiu-jitsu. Like, I want to continue to be an ambassador for jiu-jitsu. But, as I get older, really want to be known as a good dad, a good husband, a good provider. As it relates to jiu-jitsu, if I bring jiu-jitsu into that, jiu-jitsu has taught me how to be a better person, be more patient. I preach, being healthy and eating healthy. I had a heart attack a few years ago. So, going, I don't want to say vegan, but getting rid of meats and cold cuts and, kind of living just putting better fuel in my body, going back to taking the food that I put in my body, it's fuel, right? Good in, good out. So, as it relates to jiu-jitsu, I always, I like that it's made me a better person, but, at the end of the day, I want to be a good dad, a good husband, a good provider. And I think martial arts, if I had been in martial arts when I was younger, I don't know if I would have stayed with it. Cause I said, I quit a lot of sports when I was a kid.
Sure.
I think I found it when I needed it. I found jujitsu when I needed it. And in my 40s, I was a single guy, dating, businesses, my business wasn't going so great,
right.
And it really helped to get rid of the stresses of the day. And I was able to come back, you go a good training session, you go in with not feeling well, just some bricks on the shoulder from that day. Yeah. When somebody's putting their foot on your neck or about to choke you, or they've got a leg that's, being put into a precarious position, you're not so worried about how much money is in the bank at that moment, or that order that you didn't get from your best client, or that deal you didn't close. And I'd say for a good couple of hours after that, I put it this way. I tell my wife, if you want to argue, if you're mad at me and we're going to have an argument, do it after jiu-jitsu, because you're going to win every time. You're going to win every time because I am going to be I'm going to be like a bowl of Jell-O. That's when you need to talk to me about stuff. When I've just had a really stressful day and, maybe I didn't get that sale that I thought was coming through, or somebody cancels, whatever.
Right.
And to come home and like, hey, we've got to talk about this thing that's very important and life-changing.
Right.
I'm going to be on edge. I'm going to be, I'm ready for that battle. But when it comes out of jiu-jitsu, that's all gone. I mean, you could really like pour me into my car when I'm done, because that's like that hour, 2 hours is probably, I've forgotten about everything.
Right.
I'm not thinking about anything. I'm in my car. I'm smiling, man, putting on my favorite music. Right. That ride home, that 15-minute ride home is probably this, other than the rolls and the training, that's my second best 15 minutes of the day. That it's just like everything is gone, man. It's like, this is what life could be.
I love it. It brings you to serenity, bro. And
man.
So what's one thing that you think people misunderstand about you the most?
About jiu-jitsu?
About you.
Oh, about me. Well, we all get this. Hi-ya, that I train karate. That's one annoying one. But I would say personally, because if you can't tell, I talk for a living. I do sales for a living.
Good, man.
I've been doing sales when I was in my 20s. I speak very loud. I'm from New York. On top of New York,
bro.
Yeah.
I feel you.
I walk around with, if I can, resting bitch face. Yeah. My wife says, "Why do you look so mean?" And she's like, she tells me she loves it, but why do you look so mean in the same breath? I said, you know what? Dude. I just used to being like, I love to smile. I'm a jokester. I love to have fun. I started a funny t-shirt website. It was my first website just because I wanted to be surrounded by laughter all day. Mm-hmm. But, being from New York and just having to put on that tough facade, I'll just walk around with a straight face. Like, nobody's going to want to bother me because I'm going to look like I'm going to kill them, but I'm not. I'm a big freaking teddy bear. I'm I got a nice, soft center. Right. So I think most people will look at me, see my size, hear about jiu-jitsu and think like,
just if I have to
if I have to raise my voice, especially like at work, if I've had to raise my voice, it's like, oh my God, Milton's going to kill somebody. I'm not going to punch somebody out or put them in a chokehold. That's for me. That's for my stress relief. That's for protecting myself and my family. I'm never going to use it in an aggressive, nature. And I can't say that's always been, before jiu-jitsu, I can't say that same thing. Yeah, it might have been a little bit more aggressive, but it taught me how to relax a little bit. But I think most people see this, my bald head under here, my shaved head, I, look like I might be a hoodlum if I'm wearing baggy pants that day. And I think just people don't realize until they talk to me, they're like, oh, well, he's a freaking softie. You got a foundation. I'm giving away money. I give away stuff I love to give away and to do things for others. So I think once they get to know me, they're like, holy crap, I had you wrong.
I love it. That's funny. I get that resting bitch face.
Yeah, they do, man. I cross the street if I saw you on the side of the road, I'd probably cross to the other side too.
Yeah, right. Hey, we're back with my guy, Milton Campis from Jiu Jitsu Dummies. We're going to move into our leveling up lightning round. And
love it.
Milton, like you and I could talk for hours on each one of these questions. You got 5 seconds. I'm going to cut you off.
Oh,
okay. So whatever comes to the top of your head, and all of them can be answered quickly.
Okay.
You ready to rock?
Let's do it. I don't know if 5 seconds is short, but let's do it.
I know, but you got to. Let's level up. What's the best leveling up advice you've ever received?
Focus.
Love it. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
Love of training.
Love it.
The body.
Not outside of jujitsudummies.com and timetoshinetoday.com, my shameless plug, what other website do you go to level up?
I love Jeffrey Gitomer for sales, but it also helps with life. He has a lot of really cool books.
Beautiful. So now that kind of leads into this question. If I'm in my doldrums, just not feeling it, like, Fergie, read this book. What's the book?
Oh, wow. Jiu-Jitsu University is my go-to because it's like, it's a manual for jiu-jitsu. That's my go-to.
Love it. Any charity or organization you like to give your time and or money to?
We Defy Foundation and the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation. We award scholarships to first responders and veterans and kids.
Freaking love that, man. Especially the veteran side. We do a ton here. Last question. You can elaborate just a little bit on this one, man, but what's the best decade of music? 60s, 70s, 80s, or 90s?
What's the best decade?
Of music, 60s, 70s.
Oh, the 90s. Come on. That's not a question. That's like stating fact. I mean, 90s R&B. Come on. East Coast. Forget about it. Next question. Give me a better one than that one.
We're done, man. Tell us about Jiu Jitsu Dummies Podcast.
The Jiu Jitsu Dummies Podcast that we've been around for May will be 2 years. It was, I put it this way. I never thought about podcasting in my life. Ever. I didn't think it was going to be something that I did. The only podcast I probably listened to was Joe Rogan once in a while if I wanted to listen to a podcast. And, training sessions, go have a beer or some pizza in the evening with some friends, go watch a fight. And the stories that I would hear from some of my, kind of like higher belts, I'd be like, man, I wish that white belts can hear us talking about this stuff. This is the stuff that they need. Right. And I walked away from those a couple of times. And then finally one day I just told my wife, I said, I'm thinking about doing a podcast, and told her why. And the first words, I thought she was going to tell me again. She says, jiu-jitsu threw up on me. So like, enough with the jiu-jitsu already. And she goes, oh, that's really cool. There's some guys that film a podcast in my office. You can come do it in the conference room there. And I was just like, eyes bulged out of my head. We're eating dinner. And inside I was just like, I can't believe she just said I could do this, because without her support, I really couldn't have. And that's our podcast originally before COVID was a roundtable of 4 to 5, sometimes 6 jiu-jitsu players. Our coach would come in. We had guests coming in. One of my newer hosts was a former 2-time guest. He's a permanent part of the show now. We would sit around and just talk about jiu-jitsu. Now we had to go more to the interview format because, kind of doing this because of COVID. Absolutely. But we're going to be moving into a bigger studio where we can go back to those roundtables as we can bring guests in. I do film in my house right now. This is my kind of home studio. Yeah. So, it's real uncomfortable to, number one, kick my wife and my daughter off the internet so that it doesn't disturb the feed. I don't know if you've been there. Oh, yeah. Or to, to just have strangers come in the house. I'm rolling around with these guys, but not always, and to have strangers come in the house. So we're moving into another studio and hopefully going back to that roundtable format with our guests coming in, because it's really, really fun to have them sitting right there. So, it's expanded into this, or grown into this interview style where we're having some really big names on the show. I have Brandon McCaffrey coming on next weekend, Erin Hurley. She's a world champion. I mentioned to you before the podcast, Richard Bressler, who is Rorion Gracie's first official student in the U.S. He's coming on. He just wrote a book. He's going to be on in March, the first weekend of March. So we got some just really good things happening, and just, it's growing. And it's funny because now people call us to be on the show, where I used to like hit people up on Instagram like, hey, would you like to be on my podcast? Now it's grown into this thing where people know who we are, and we're kind of like a stop on the road of jiu-jitsu podcasts. Like if you want to get to be known, or you're doing a tournament, like, hey, you got a big event coming, a fight to win. Hey, get with Milton. He'll have you on the show, and you could talk about and shine some light on what you're doing. I love we mentioned veterans. I'm a We Defy ambassador. 2 of my hosts are We Defy ambassadors as well. We kind of say the show is a We Defy ambassador, and they award scholarships to wounded combat veterans. Nice. We also run the Jiu Jitsu Dummies Foundation. And separate from the podcast, it's its own foundation, but we actually award scholarships to children, just children doing cool things, good things out in the world, and veterans and first responders. We haven't awarded to those 2 yet. We've done 2 children, and our next one's going to be a veteran, but just people doing really, really cool things out in the world in their community. It's our first 2 awardees were Bridger Walker, the little boy who got bit in the face protecting his sister. He's our very first scholarship winner. Bridger Walker's dad, Robert, is a lifetime Patreon supporter now, is an official is on our Hall of Fame here. But Bridger was our first. And then our second was a little girl who's been raising money through an organization called Tap Cancer Out, who we've also had on the show, whose mother is battling cancer, colon cancer. So she raises money through Tap Cancer Out. She gets to do their tournaments for free, go to the tournaments and compete in Tap Cancer Out tournaments. Right. So those were two amazing kids, and our veterans and first responders have a lot to live up to. So we're looking to award our next scholarship sometime between February and March. But so that's what the show has allowed us to do. We give away tons of stuff on the show, gear, CBD from sponsors, T-shirts, gis. If I can get my hands on it, I'm giving it away. I don't keep it for myself. I might give it to, some of my co-hosts, but that's what our show is about. Talking about jiu-jitsu, shining a light on some really cool people within our world, and giving lots of stuff away.
I love it. And I love what you're doing for the veterans. People that, know me, I did 6 tours from 90 to 97. So it's been, it's nice that a local community here in South Florida, and everyone knows I'm, the unifier, the veterans of Palm Beach. I'm involved in all of that stuff here. And also,
maybe you could send us some suggestions on somebody, a worthy veteran, somebody who maybe you want to get into jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Maybe it doesn't have to be somebody that, both of those winners that I mentioned were both already doing jiu-jitsu. Okay. But we'd love to find a veteran that's doing some really cool stuff that maybe, would want to try jiu-jitsu. So, maybe you can help us out with that off the air.
Absolutely, brother. We'll definitely get
Appreciate that.
You bet. And I'm also going to give away the orange Jiu-Jitsu for Dummies, Jiu Jitsu Dummies t-shirt, podcast t-shirt. The first one that comments positively on either LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook on the Time to Shine Today handles there. So once it's in there, I'll make sure that I get the money over to my boy Milton and have him mail that out to you. Maybe he'll take care of the postage. If not, I'll add that to the Venmo I send him.
It's on me. I'll say that's on me.
Awesome.
I'll take care of the whole thing. Don't worry about it. Let me know when you got a winner.
And Squad, this is a lot different than a lot of the people that I've interviewed. Most of the people are coaches, consultants, and whatnot. But I was so stoked to have Milton come on. He's someone that believes in humility. He leaves the ego at the door because he doesn't want to hurt himself or others. He emphasizes that a great coach, a jiu-jitsu coach, is going to help you with your strengths and help you stay away from your weaknesses. And that's what happens in life, anyways. And if you're starting your jiu-jitsu journey, ask yourself why you're doing it. Why are you here? Is the studio or the school going to be the right fit for you? And if you're working with a coach, ask them what they're going to do to hold you accountable. If you're going to start working with a jiu-jitsu coach, ask them what they're going to do to hold you accountable as well, so you can work together as a cohesive team. He's going to, Milton tells us, make sure you're stretching, get into yoga, get into plyometrics, stuff that is going to help you be elastic. Because trust me, you don't want to go through what me and Milton went through in our 40s. If we would have started back in our 20s, it'd be a hell of a lot different. He's going to be remembered as a legacy of a teacher, a good father, an awesome husband, and a provider. He wants you to stay mindful and present and always focused. And Milton, you're humble, you're hungry, you level up your health, you level up your wealth. Thank you so much for coming on, brother. It's been nothing short of a pleasure.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. You got your varsity letter, brother.
Thank you, man.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of Time to Shine Today podcast, proudly brought to you by Sutter & Nugent Real Estate Excellence, who can be reached at 561-249-7266 and online at www.sutterandnugent.com. If you are a business owner or professional who would like to be interviewed on Time to Shine Today, please visit timetoshinetoday.com/guest. If you like this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. There's a link in the show notes to our website. Also there, you will see our recommended resources. We hope that you will support our show by supporting them. If you like what you've been listening to, it'd be great if you could just give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe while you're at it. I'm your host, Scott Ferguson, and until next time, let's level up. It's our time to shine.